Captain Lisa Morgan led her ship toward Jupiter as Earth counted down its final hours. The UES Defiant moved through space like a metal coffin, carrying the last hopes of humanity. Behind them, the alien fleet waited in perfect formation, while ahead lay only darkness and desperate theories. The mission had no official authorization because there was no time for paperwork. Admiral Hayes had looked at the scanner readings from Jupiter orbit and made a command decision that would either save humanity or get them all killed faster. Something was hiding in the shadows of Europa, and they needed to know what it was before Earth died. Commander Kelly Thompson ran the away team with the efficiency of someone who knew this might be her last mission. She had volunteered for the assignment when 3 other officers had refused to go. Kelly was young enough to believe in miracles and old enough to know they rarely happened when you needed them most. The object appeared on their screens when they were still 1,000,000 kilometers from Europa. At first it looked like another moon hiding in Jupiter's shadow. Then the computers calculated its dimensions and the bridge fell silent. The structure was artificial and it was massive beyond any human construction project ever attempted. Lisa stared at the readings and felt her mind struggle to accept what she saw. The station stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Its hull absorbed light like it was made from solid darkness itself. No energy signatures registered on their sensors, but something that big could not exist without power sources beyond human understanding. They docked with an airlock that should not have existed. The station computer systems recognized their ship and opened doors that had been sealed for longer than human civilization had existed. Artificial gravity pulled them inside corridors that were clearly built for human use but showed signs of age that made no sense. Commander, Kelly Thompson led her team through passages that echoed with footsteps from ages past. The walls were covered with symbols that looked familiar but wrong somehow, like words written in a language humans had forgotten they ever knew. Emergency lighting activated as they moved deeper into the station heart. The command center stretched across a space larger than most city squares. Holographic displays showed star maps that included galaxies humans had never seen. Control stations designed for human hands waited in perfect condition, despite being old enough to predate recorded history. Everything was ready for their arrival like someone had been expecting them. Dr. Susan Clark was the first to touch one of the ancient terminals. The xenoarchaeologist had spent her career studying dead civilizations, but this felt different. The technology responded to her presence with systems coming online that had been dormant for centuries. Screens lit up with information written in archaic English that was barely readable. The station logs told a story that rewrote everything humans thought they knew about themselves. Earth was not humanity's first home. The species had originated in a distant galaxy and fled to the Milky Way as refugees. The journey had taken thousands of years and cost billions of lives, but some had survived to establish colonies across their new home. Kelly read the entries aloud while her team recorded everything. The files described wave after wave of alien invaders who had tried to destroy the scattered human settlements. Each time extinction seemed certain, something called the Black Fleet had appeared to drive away the attackers. The pattern had repeated for over a millennium. Dr. Clark found technical specifications that made her hands shake as she tried to understand them. The Black Fleet ships used technology that existed partially outside normal space. They could phase between dimensions and strike from angles that physics said were impossible. Their crews had undergone modifications that turned them into something more and less than human. The oldest files contained personal logs from someone named Admiral Helena Cross. She had commanded the Black Fleet during multiple extinction events, and her words carried the weight of centuries. She wrote about the price of protecting humanity and the sacrifices required to keep the species alive. Each entry was darker than the one before it. Meanwhile, on Earth, the countdown continued with mechanical precision. The Veilthran Empire broadcast surrender ceremonies to their conquered territories, showing how quickly primitive species could be brought to heel. Their war commander Zeth Val prepared his fleet for what he expected to be a brief and glorious bombardment. Admiral Victoria Hayes watched the enemy movements from Luna Base and knew she was seeing humanity last hours. The golden ships had positioned themselves for maximum destruction. When the deadline passed, they would reduce Earth to radioactive dust within minutes. No human weapon could reach them, and no human shield could stop them. But in the depths of the ancient station, something began to change. The terminals that Dr. Clark had activated sent signals across distances that spanned galaxies. Ancient beacons responded to the calls and began their own activation sequences. Ships that had slumbered in the darkness between worlds started their engines for the first time in centuries. Commander Thompson felt the vibrations through the station hull as massive systems came online. The power readings on her scanner climbed beyond anything she had seen before. Whatever this place was, it was waking up and preparing for something that made her both hopeful and terrified. The station artificial intelligence finally spoke with a voice that sounded human but carried echoes of vast age. It called itself the Guardian and explained that it had been waiting for this moment. The Black Fleet was coming home, and Earth would learn what it truly meant to be protected by forces that existed beyond normal understanding. Dr. Clark asked the question that everyone feared to voice. What was the price for this protection, and would humanity recognize itself when it was over? The Guardian paused for a long moment before answering that some prices were worth paying and some transformations were necessary for survival. Above them, the Valthran fleet prepared for victory, while around them, ancient machines prepared for war. The 72 hours were almost over, and everything was about to change in ways that would echo across galaxies for millennia to come. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant and watched the sky fill with death. Golden ships appeared from nowhere like angry stars coming to life. Each vessel stretched longer than 3 city blocks and gleamed with metal that seemed to drink sunlight. The alien fleet covered the heavens above Earth until no blue sky remained visible. Lisa had commanded ships for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The enemy vessels hung in perfect formation like they owned the space around Earth already. Their hulls reflected light in ways that hurt to look at directly. Warning alarms screamed through every human ship in orbit, but the sound felt small against what they faced. Admiral Victoria Hayes appeared on the main screen from Luna Base. Her face looked carved from stone, but Lisa could see fear dancing in her eyes. The Admiral had fought in the Mars Colony Wars and survived the Titan Rebellion, but this was different. This was extinction looking down at humanity with cold alien eyes. The communication came through quantum channels at exactly noon Earth time. A holographic figure appeared in the center of the Defiant bridge. The alien stood 9 feet tall with skin like polished silver and 4 arms that moved in perfect harmony. Its face held no expression that humans could read, but its voice carried the weight of conquered worlds. The creature spoke in perfect English, though its mouth barely moved. It called itself Ambassador Zethka of the Valthran Empire. The name rolled off its tongue like a curse word spoken in church. It told them that 47 star systems had already fallen to Empire rule. Earth would be number 48. The ultimatum was simple and final. Humanity had 72 hours to surrender completely. All military forces would disarm. All governments would dissolve. All humans would accept imperial rule or face complete destruction. The ambassador made it sound like discussing the weather, rather than the end of human civilization. Lisa watched the hologram fade and felt ice form in her stomach. Around the bridge, her crew sat frozen like statues. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez at the tactical station was the first to break the silence. Her voice cracked when she read the scanner results aloud. The smallest Empire destroyer carried more firepower than Earth's largest battleship. The numbers were not just bad, they were hopeless. Commander Amy Rodriguez ran the intelligence division from a bunker deep under Colorado. She had access to every secret file and classified project humanity had ever created. Now she sat surrounded by screens showing the same terrible truth from every angle. Humanity was outgunned by factors that made resistance seem like suicide. The Empire ships used energy sources that human science could barely detect. Their weapons could punch through any armor Earth possessed. Their shields turned human missiles into harmless light shows. Worst of all, they seemed to know exactly where every human military asset was located. They had been watching and planning for longer than anyone wanted to admit. President Michelle Carter called an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council within hours of the ultimatum. World leaders gathered in the secure bunker under Geneva, while above them alien ships cast shadows across entire continents. The arguing started before everyone had taken their seats. Chancellor Weber from the European Union demanded immediate negotiations. Prime Minister Chen from the Pacific Alliance insisted on fighting to the last breath. President Santos from the American Federation wanted to evacuate as many people as possible to the outer colonies. Everyone talked at once and no one listened to anyone else. President Carter slammed her hand on the table hard enough to crack the wooden surface. The room fell silent like children caught fighting by their teacher. She reminded them all that in 72 hours there might not be a human race left to govern. The words hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Deep in Lunabase, Dr. Patricia Wells worked alone in Archive Section 7. The section officially did not exist, and the files she accessed had been classified above top secret for over a century. Patricia had clearance that most generals never saw, but even she needed special permission to open these particular records. The file names made no sense at first glance. Project Nightfall sounded like a weapon system. Operation Dark Harbor could have been anything. But as Patricia dug deeper, she found references to things that should not exist. Ships built in facilities that had never appeared on any budget. Personnel assigned to missions with no official destinations. One name appeared again and again in the oldest files. Admiral Helena Cross had commanded something called the Black Fleet during what the records called the First Contact War. But Patricia knew human history, and there had never been a first contact war. Humans had never fought aliens before today. Yet here were detailed battle reports dating back 300 years. The files described technology that violated known physics. Ships that could fold space around themselves. Weapons that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Personnel who had undergone procedures that the files called necessary adaptations. None of it made sense, but all of it was documented. With the careful precision of military record keeping, while politicians argued and scientists scrambled for answers. Something stirred in the darkness between stars. Ancient sensors detected the Empire fleet approaching Earth and began activation sequences that had waited centuries to run. Deep in places where no human eye had ever looked, machines older than recorded history started their engines. The 72-hour countdown had begun, and Earth prepared to die. But in the void between worlds, something that remembered other countdowns began to wake from its long sleep. The Empire had made one critical error in their calculations. They assumed Earth stood alone in the darkness when in truth humanity had guardians that existed beyond their ability to detect or understand. The Golden Fleet settled into bombardment, positions around Earth like predators surrounding wounded prey. Their weapons charged with energy that could crack continents, and their crews prepared for what they expected to be a brief and glorious victory. None of them noticed the shadows growing darker in the spaces their sensors could not reach. The truth hit Earth leadership like a nuclear explosion in their minds. Dr. Patricia Wells stood before the Emergency Council with files that rewrote human history completely. The species was not native to this galaxy, but refugees from a war that had consumed entire star systems thousands of years ago. Everything they thought they knew was wrong. President Michelle Carter stared at the evidence spread across the table and felt her world crumble. Ancient star charts showed human colonies scattered across dozens of galaxies. Battle reports described conflicts that had lasted millennia against enemies that humanity had forgotten ever existed. The Black Fleet had been protecting scattered human settlements for longer than recorded history. Commander, Laura Bennett volunteered to make first contact with the awakening vessels before anyone could stop her. She took a small shuttle from the ancient station and flew toward coordinates that the Guardian had provided. The journey led her into empty space where her sensors detected nothing but cosmic background radiation. Then the ships appeared like ghosts materializing from another dimension. The Black Fleet vessels were sleek predators that seemed to absorb light itself. Their hulls showed no seams or weapon ports but radiated power that made Laura's teeth ache. These were not machines built by human hands, but something far more advanced and terrible. The lead ship dwarfed anything humanity had ever constructed. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, and its surface rippled like liquid metal. Docking bays opened without any communication, and Laura found herself guided by invisible forces into a hangar that defied understanding. The shuttle landed itself without any input from her. Inside the Black Fleet flagship, Laura walked through corridors that whispered with voices from ages past. The walls were covered with names of battles and dates that spanned centuries. Memorial plaques honored crew members who had died protecting humanity's scattered colonies. Every surface told stories of sacrifice and victory against impossible odds. The bridge was a cathedral of advanced technology, where holographic displays showed tactical information from across multiple galaxies. Crew members moved with perfect coordination, but something about them made Laura's skin crawl. They looked human, but their eyes held depths that spoke of centuries of war and modification. Admiral Helena Cross turned from the command chair, and Laura Hart stopped. The woman appeared to be in her 30s but carried herself with authority that came from commanding fleets across geological time. Her uniform was black as deep space and seemed to shift between dimensions when she moved. The Admiral spoke with a voice that echoed strangely in the confined space. She explained that the Black Fleet had been waiting for Earth call for over 300 years. Every time humanity faced extinction, the fleet awakened from its slumber between dimensions. They were guardians and protectors, but the price of their service was terrible beyond understanding. Helena showed Laura the crew quarters where men and women from across human history served together. Some had joined the fleet during the first alien invasion of Earth colonies. Others had volunteered during more recent extinction events. All had undergone modifications that allowed them to exist partially outside normal space and time. The Admiral explained that each crew member had sacrificed their humanity piece by piece to become something capable of protecting what remained. They could no longer age or die in conventional ways, but they had lost the ability to feel emotions as normal humans did. They existed in a state between life and something else entirely. Back on Earth, the Velthran Empire prepared for what they expected to be their easiest conquest. War Commander Zeth Val reviewed tactical plans that called for systematic destruction of all human military assets, followed by orbital bombardment of major population centers. The Golden Fleet moved into final attack positions with weapons charging. Admiral Victoria Hayes watched the enemy fleet from Luna Base and counted the minutes until humanity died. Every scanner showed the same hopeless truth. The alien weapons could crack continents and their shields could stop any retaliation. Earth military forces were insects compared to what they faced. But deep space sensors began detecting gravitational anomalies throughout the solar system. Massive objects were moving through hyperspace toward Earth at velocities that should have been impossible. The disturbances were too large to be ships and too organized to be natural phenomena. Captain Lisa Morgan received a transmission on frequencies that should not have existed. The voice identified itself as Admiral Helena Cross of the Black Fleet and informed her that humanity guardians were finally coming home. The woman spoke with calm authority about events that would reshape the galaxy. Dr. Susan Clark continued studying the ancient station records and made discoveries that filled her with both hope and terror. The Black Fleet had fought and won against enemies that made the Velthran Empire look like children with toys, but each victory had required sacrifices that transformed the defenders into something barely recognizable as human. The files described previous extinction, events where entire human colonies had been saved by the fleet intervention. Each time the pattern was the same. Overwhelming enemy forces would attack human settlements and seem certain to succeed. Then the Black Fleet would emerge from the darkness and destroy the attackers completely. But the records also showed what happened to the species after each salvation. Humanity would advance technologically and spread to new worlds. Population would grow and civilization would flourish. Then eventually new enemies would appear and the cycle would begin again. Each time humanity survived, but something essential was lost in the process. Commander Bennett learned that joining the Black Fleet meant accepting transformation that could never be reversed. Volunteers would gain access to technology and knowledge that spanned millennia, but lose their connection to normal human existence. They became eternal guardians watching over a species they could no longer truly belong to. The countdown reached its final hours while ancient forces gathered in the darkness around Earth. The Velthran Empire had no idea that they were about to face defenders who had been preparing for this moment across centuries of hidden warfare. The Golden Fleet would learn what it meant to threaten humanity, true children. The battle began without warning shots or formal declarations. Black Fleet vessels materialized around the Velthran golden ships like nightmares stepping from another dimension. The enemy had no time to react before finding themselves surrounded by predators that should not have existed in normal space. Admiral Helena Cross commanded the engagement from her flagship while reality bent around the Black Fleet. Her tactical displays showed the battlefield from angles that human physics said were impossible. The Velthran Empire had superior numbers, but numbers meant nothing against forces that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Commander Nicole Harper coordinated fleet movements with precision that bordered on supernatural. She seemed to know where enemy ships would be before they arrived there. Her orders sent Black Fleet vessels through folds in space that appeared and vanished like cracks in broken glass. The human ships moved like living shadows hunting prey that could not escape. War Commander Zeth Val watched his perfect formation collapse into chaos as human vessels appeared inside his defensive perimeter. The golden ships fired everything they had, but their weapons passed through targets that flickered between solid matter and empty space. His tactical officers screamed reports that made no sense about enemies that could not exist. The Black Fleet weapons were visible only when they fired. Beams of darkness tore through Imperial hulls like paper, while energy shields that had stopped asteroid impacts offered no protection. Velthran ships exploded in silence while their debris drifted through space like golden snow falling. In a cosmic winter, Captain Lisa Morgan watched the battle from Earth orbit and struggled to understand what she was seeing. The scanner readings showed impossible things happening with casual efficiency. Black Fleet vessels would vanish from one location and appear behind enemy ships without crossing the space between. They fought like ghosts with the firepower of gods. But something about the Black Fleet crews disturbed her more than their impossible technology. When Admiral Cross appeared on communication channels, her image flickered between human and something else. Her voice carried harmonics that suggested she was speaking from multiple dimensional positions at once. She was protecting humanity, but she was no longer entirely human herself. The Velthran Empire had conquered 47 star systems using tactics that had never failed. Their golden ships were mobile fortresses that could reduce planets to radioactive debris. Their crews were veterans of thousands of battles against species that had all fallen to Imperial might. None of it mattered against enemies that existed partially outside normal reality. Admiral Cross demonstrated the true power of the Black Fleet when she ordered a concentrated attack on the enemy flagship. Dozens of human vessels converged on the Imperial command ship from impossible angles. They fired simultaneously while existing in multiple dimensional states. The Golden Fortress simply ceased to exist as if it had never been built. Commander Laura Bennett stood on the bridge of a Black Fleet destroyer and felt her humanity slipping away piece by piece. The modifications required to exist in dimensional flux were changing, her at levels deeper than DNA. She could feel her thoughts, becoming colder and more efficient, while her emotions faded like colors in failing light. War Commander Zeth Val sent desperate messages to Imperial Command, describing impossible defeats and enemies that violated known laws of physics. His fleet was being destroyed by forces that should not exist. The responses from his superiors showed growing panic as they realized that the Empire had encountered something beyond their understanding. Dr. Susan Clark monitored the battle from the ancient station and made horrifying discoveries in the deepest archive levels. The Black Fleet crews were not just modified humans, but something that existed in a state between life and digital consciousness. They had uploaded aspects of themselves to the ship systems to achieve dimensional manipulation abilities. The records showed that each crew member gradually lost pieces of their original personality as they became more integrated with their vessels. They retained memories and skills, but the emotions and connections that made them human slowly disappeared. They became perfect guardians, but at the cost of everything that made existence worthwhile. Earth military forces watched their planet defenders fight with capabilities that made human technology look primitive by comparison. The Black Fleet vessels moved through battle like dancers performing a choreographed routine. Every movement was calculated for maximum efficiency, while their enemies flailed against opponents they could barely perceive. Admiral Victoria Hayes received tactical reports that read like science fiction rather than military analysis. Black Fleet ships were taking damage that should have destroyed them, but continued fighting without apparent concern for structural integrity. Their crews operated with coordination that suggested they shared a collective consciousness. The Velthran Golden Fleet continued to diminish as more ships disappeared into dimensional rifts or exploded under weapons fire that came from multiple angles simultaneously. Their formation scattered as panic replaced discipline among crews who had never experienced defeat. Before Commander Nicole Harper tracked enemy movements with awareness that extended beyond normal sensory input. She could perceive Imperial ship positions across dimensional boundaries and predict their actions before tactical computers calculated possibilities. But each use of these abilities cost her more of her original humanity. Captain Morgan realized that humanity was being saved by defenders who had paid prices that made victory feel hollow. The Black Fleet would destroy the Empire completely, but the cost of protection was transformation into something that could barely be called human anymore. War Commander Zeth Val made his final transmission as his command ship began breaking apart around him. He warned Imperial Command that humanity possessed guardians who existed beyond conventional warfare. The Golden Empire that had conquered galaxies was dying in Earth skies while its victims watched from dimensional shadows. The battle reached its climax as the last Vilethron ships attempted to retreat through hyperspace. The Black Fleet followed them through dimensional barriers and destroyed them in the spaces between normal reality. No enemy vessel would survive to report what had happened above Earth. The golden debris of the Vilethron Empire drifted through Earth orbit like scattered coins from a broken treasure chest. No enemy vessel remained intact, and no alien crew had survived the encounter with humanity dimensional guardians. The threat that had promised extinction was nothing but metal fragments catching sunlight. In the cosmic void, Admiral Helena Cross materialized on the bridge of the UES Defiant as her image flickered between dimensions. Captain Lisa Morgan could see through the woman in places as if she was becoming transparent. The Admiral spoke with a voice that echoed from multiple positions in space about choices that faced humanity now that they had seen their true protectors. The Black Fleet hung in Earth orbit like a collection of living shadows. Their hulls absorbed light in ways that hurt to look at directly, and their energy signatures registered as impossible readings on human instruments. These were not ships built by mortal hands, but constructs that existed partially outside normal reality. President Michelle Carter received the Admiral explanation of humanity, true history, while world leaders listened in stunned silence. The species had been refugees for millennia, with colonies scattered across multiple galaxies. Each time extinction threatened them, the Black Fleet emerged from dimensional hiding places to drive away their enemies. But protection came with a price that grew heavier with each rescue. The fleet needed volunteers to replace crew members who had finally transcended beyond any recognizable humanity. Service aboard the Guardian. Vessels required modifications that slowly stripped away everything that made existence meaningful, while granting power beyond mortal understanding. Commander Laura Bennett stood before Earth leadership and announced her decision to join the Black Fleet. She understood what the transformation would cost, but believed that humanity needed guardians willing to pay any price for species survival. Her words carried the weight of someone who knew she was choosing a form of living death. Dr. Patricia Wells had decoded enough of the ancient archives to understand the cycle that governed human existence. The species would flourish and expand until new enemies threatened extinction. Then the Black Fleet would emerge to eliminate the threat before returning to dimensional shadows. Each rescue advanced human civilization, but required new guardians to maintain the protection. Admiral Cross explained that joining the fleet meant existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Volunteers would gain access to technology that spanned geological time periods and knowledge that covered entire galaxies, but they would lose the ability to feel emotions, as normal humans experience them, and gradually forget what it meant to be truly alive. Commander Nicole Harper appeared alongside the Admiral as an example of what fleet service produced. She had joined during the previous extinction event 3 centuries ago and retained her memories and skills, but spoke with mechanical precision that suggested her humanity had been systematically removed. She was an efficient guardian, but no longer truly human. The transformation process began immediately as Commander Bennett was transported to the Black Fleet flagship. Dr. Susan Clark monitored the procedure through quantum links and watched human DNA being rewritten at fundamental levels. The volunteer was being prepared for existence across dimensional boundaries that would grant godlike power at the cost of mortal limitations. Earth military forces received new technology downloads that would advance human civilization by centuries in months. The Black Fleet shared knowledge about faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, and dimensional physics. But the gifts came with warnings about enemies that would eventually notice humanity growing technological sophistication. Captain Lisa Morgan toured one of the Black Fleet vessels and felt her sanity strain under the experience. Corridors existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, while crew quarters phased between solid matter and energy states. The ship itself was alive in ways that violated everything humans thought they knew about the boundary between organic life and mechanical construction. Admiral Helena Cross revealed the ultimate truth about the Guardian cycle that governed human existence. Every species that achieved interstellar civilization eventually faced choices between extinction and transcendence. Those who chose transcendence became protectors for their own younger generations, locked in eternal service to defend what they could no longer truly. Joined the Admiral showed Lisa records of other species that had faced similar moments. Some had chosen extinction rather than pay the price of dimensional guardianship. Others had accepted transformation and now protected their descendants from threats that spanned galaxies. Each choice led to survival, but at costs that made victory taste like ashes. Commander Bennett completed her transformation as Earth watched one of their own become something magnificent and terrible. She retained her memories and core personality, but gained abilities that let her perceive threats across interstellar distances and respond to dangers before they fully materialized. She had become a perfect guardian but was no longer entirely human. The Black Fleet prepared to return to the spaces between galaxies where they waited for the next extinction event. Their vigil would continue across centuries while humanity expanded and flourished under their protection. But someday new enemies would appear, and the cycle would begin again with different volunteers paying the price for species survival. Admiral Cross left Earth with a final warning and promise. Other empires would come seeking to destroy or enslave humanity as the species continued to advance. But the Guardians would be watching from dimensional shadows, ready to emerge whenever their protection was needed. The Black Fleet was humanity's future, and its greatest hope wrapped together in forms that no longer remembered what it meant to dream. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on her bridge and looked up at stars that no longer seemed empty or cold. Somewhere in the darkness between worlds, ancient guardians maintained their eternal watch over a species they had once belonged to. The price of protection was transformation into something beyond human understanding, but the alternative was extinction. Earth was safe, but humanity had learned that survival sometimes required becoming something that could barely remember why survival mattered. The Black Fleet faded back into dimensional hiding while their newest member began her eternal service protecting a species she would gradually forget how to love but would never stop defending. The story ended where it began, with humans looking up at alien skies, but now they knew that the darkness held guardians as well as threats.